All right, so we're going to continue our Moreno units for the Minucha of Surname Danger and Sir Moshe Montefiore. We are continuing the Muktze units. We're in unit 39. We're about to start unit 39. We finished unit 38. 38 dealt with items from nature that I want to now turn into things that I'm using in my home and around me, and therefore they will no longer be Muktze because I'm interested in using them in my space. As opposed to unit 39 goes back in the other direction and says, I have something, I have an item, I have a tool that's already part of my life, and now it is no longer useful or no longer as useful or no longer useful in its original purpose. When does it become Muktze again? For example, if I have a glass vase, so that's a kli. So I could carry it on Shabbos, right? That's easy, right? It's an easy question. We're starting with something easy. Now, the vase, has the look of, okay, where's he going? The vase shatters and breaks into a billion pieces. Is it still a vase? No. Is it going to be Muktze now? L'chora, yes. All right. What happens if, okay, how broken does it need to be in order to become Muktze?
Not usable.
When it's rendered not usable. Now define. So if I have I have nice glasses, right? Drinking glasses, right? Right? They're like square. I actually do. They're like square shape. It's like a nice pleasant shape, right? It's square. It's, you know what I'm saying? A square shape. Is that? If the top, if it gets chipped on the top, you can't use it as glass because people will cut themselves, right? But it's very, very pretty if you put like a very small bunch of flowers in it.
The bottom falls out of the glass. Glass is perfectly fine, but the bottom fell out, so it can no longer hold anything.
No, so in that case, that's easy because it's right. So so that there we'd say what Gux is saying, right? What you can use? You can't use it for anything, so it's not a glass anymore. So what is it? It just.
As you said,
it's a very dangerous napkin holder. But I'm saying if part of the top chips, I wouldn't let anyone drink out of it because it could be dangerous, right? You could cut yourself.
You can use it as a vase.
I can use it as a small vase. Now you might say, right, but the safer thing is to throw it out. The doctor will say throw it out because it's dangerous. What? Okay, there. Sorry. I thought you were saying that.
I'm just saying, man of experience.
No, it's just
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
least.
Or to the guest you like the least. Like those people. So that's what we're dealing with in this unit. So let's get to it.
It's when it doesn't. When you say it's not becoming. It's what do you call it?
Wait, hold on. They're
Mishlal kekli. The question is the kli. From the first use, the original use, or can you?
So I'm saying they're Tanaim, they're Amorim. Let's see them. Yeah, your questions are good questions. Such good questions that's exactly what the so let's see that. So let's start with the first Mishnah. It's a good place to start. First Mishnah says the Mishnah in Perek Yud Zayin Mishnah Hey Masal Shabbat. Kol hakelim nitalim b'Shabbat shivreihem nitalim imahen. It's not imahen together with, but just as, right? The can be carried, right? Can be carried. Tiltul, right? Ulvad shiur sin main melacha. What melacha? It moved around, but the point was. Ulvad shiur sin main melacha. Shivrei areva lechasot ben et pi hachavit. So I have a bowl, a ceramic bowl, and it breaks. I can't serve salad in it anymore, but I could use it to cover things in the fridge. So, right, I need to cover things before I put them in the fridge, right? Why are you making faces?
Yeah, we don't want stuff. Right, we're not on top of our pool, but okay.
So
In
here-
principle, you can use.
So that's a very big question. What you're saying now is that's a very big question that we're going to have to deal with later on. And that is, you can use it, but will you? Do you? Right? Is it enough to say,
Possibility,
right,
but I'll never do it.
right,
Well, no normal person would do it.
right, exactly. So that's something no normal person in our world. What about that? Right? Someone told me when I was giving this share a while ago, and someone said that in certain places, when the printer runs out of ink, what do? So you buy a new printer. Because changing the ink is such a hassle and expense and hassle, and buying a printer is easier. So, right? We live in a world of plenty, and therefore a lot of the questions here, maybe the question that will come up here, won't necessarily work the same way, right? So, all right, but let's see what they were saying, right? In their world, they didn't have as many, right? We have endless utensils, endless dishes. Everything is cheap, correct? Everything is cheap. So once it's chipped, you're going to throw it out because it's cheap, right? That's why we call it cheap. Now, anyway, so Shivrei. So just 1 second, Rav Baruch. Shivrei, I don't need both hands, the virtual and the real. Shivrei rava lachzot ben pi chavit. Shivrei zchurit lachzot ben pi pach. Right, and you want to cover my oil flask, right, with a broken piece of glass. Right, that's definitely something we wouldn't do, but they did. All right. You have to be able to do the original purpose. Therefore, shivrei reva, it's a bowl, so it has to be litzok letochan mikpah. So you can't serve salad, but you could serve gravy. Right? It's just a smaller bowl. Shel zochid litzok letochan shemen.
Still got a.
If it can still be used, so Tanakama says it has to be useful. We have to define what useful is, and Rabbi Yehuda says it has to still be able to serve its original use, its original
So
purpose.
if your dish was used for static, it's broken, it's a little bit of enough to put even two
Right.
little pieces of.
So it's still effectively a bowl.
It can be used.
Just a very small bowl.
But it can potentially be used or theoretically used.
Correct. This is Rav Baruch is
Hmm?
I want to allow Rav Baruch.
I just want to say that the idea of a disposable culture is changing, and and if you're camping, these kinds of issues actually do come up. If you're camping somewhere over Shabbat, and they come up because some people are really trying not to use multiple resources.
So that's an interesting point, right? And we're gonna
The
return to
old
world of the Gemara,
is new again.
right? In the Gemara's world, it was very obvious that you don't throw things out unless they really don't have any use or they're dangerous. Otherwise, of course, you don't throw things out. And now we have a world of plenty and everything's cheap, so we just throw things out easily.
And
Now we're
in
coming back to a
Europe,
world where we
and
say,
in Europe and
we're
North
creating so much
Africa.
garbage, the world won't be able to survive this amount of garbage. We're going to have to not throw things out, right? And then, right, so the reusable culture that we have, right, we're reusing our Rami Levy bags, right?
It's not only from the Zman, the Tkufa of the Gemara. 100 years ago, in Europe and in North Africa and in Mizrahi communities,
Mhm.
that was also true.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
We're not so far away from that.
All right. No, so it is right, but it is interesting, right? If I think of the Rami Levy bags, right? It used to be if I had the smallest hole, it's like, I'm done with this. I used to try to reuse the bags even before it was law and everything, because why not? Like, why throw them out all the time? But I had the smallest hole, like goodbye, right? Now I'm not so why? Now I'm not so fussy. Because I mean, buying new bags is just reuse this, right?
But my son's Ganyar will take him from the house that we like.
Well, what?
My son is in a Ganyar
Yeah,
and they will take like
anything.
that we can break.
Okay, so that's a very big question, right? That's a very, sorry? Yeah. So that's right. So in the Chinami, that's a very big question. What about things that are useful only in certain contexts, right? Useful for me, not useful for you, etc. Right? I see it as garbage, and you see it as a
What's that?
yeah. I say vintage. The Seder.
You're right.
Says the Gemara. You want to say something? The Seder. Says the Gemara. Amal v'yida amal Shmuel. Machloket shnishberu me'erev Shabbat. Mar savar me'en melachtan in me'en melacha acheret lo. Mar savar afilu me'en melacha acheret. אבל נשברו בשבת, דבר הכל מותרים, היו מוכנים לגבי אביהן מותר. Meaning like this. The Muktze will be defined as Muktze at Ben Hashmashot. That's the cutoff point, right? Everything we learned in the previous unit about at what point you need to decide that you're going to be using this over Shabbat. Ben Hashmashot. As before Ben Hashmashot, that's when you have to make that decision. Once Ben Hashmashot is passed, you can no longer change that. Now, so again, everything we learned about last unit, right? Preparing, thinking, all those things have to happen before Ben Hashmashot, before Shkia, right? Ben Hashmashot is the limit.
I'm going to use that month and that month and that month.
No, of course, no. If they're already tools, if they're actual your utensils, of course you don't need to. No, I was talking about things that you take in from nature, right? So I'm only mentioning that because here we have the opposite. When Shabbat started, this jug, right, the ceramic jug I had is a jug. Now then breaks. Do I say this ceramic was not Muktze Be'erev Shabbat? Right, that's what the Gemara here. That's what the Gemara is saying here. The ceramic wasn't Muktze before. When Shabbat started, wasn't Muktze, so it's not going to suddenly magically turn into Muktze not just because it broke. I can no longer use it as a jug, correct? But I can still use it as a cup, so or as a vase. Right? Whatever, right? I can still use it as something else, and therefore everyone will agree, since Shabbat started with this thing being not Muktze, it won't suddenly become Muktze unless it's really not a Kli anymore. It's actually completely changed. Not if its use changed, but only if it's completely changed. That's what, so what's the machloket in the Mishnah about whether it has to be the original use or not? The machloket is about things that broke before Shabbat. That's the way Shmuel explains.
No, before this is Shabbat and steam, not
Yeah, well, Achkia, Achkia, correct.
Here's a Moyle's knife. What do we say about that?
Moyle's knife is a different story.
Like,
Moyle's knife is
separate category.
It's a separate category. It's Muktze Mechamat Chasson case. It's a different category. Chasson case, yeah, it's a category we haven't learned yet. We're going to get to that in unit 40.
Because it's Muktze going into Shabbat.
Yes. Yeah, so that's you're asking about if you have a bris on Shabbos, yeah?
Yeah,
You may, you don't know yet.
don't know yet, but whatever, it's Muktze going into Shabbat, so then all of a sudden the Moyle needs to use it. It's clearly not Muktze because he can use it. And then I don't know what point does it.
No, the bigger
automatically
problem,
look for
the
it.
bigger problem, no, so the poskim have a very big issue with that. They have a field day, is that the expression? With this, because what happens right after the bris?
When's the night?
Yes,
If it's in your
is the
hand,
mohel not allowed to put it down until he puts it down where he wants to put it and then goes back to returns to being Muktze.
right, he first
So
has to
that's
put it down, but just-
a whole balagan. Right, so it's,
No choice but to
so
put
we're
it
just-
down, but then, like,
no, but then it might be
Give it
stuck
to
there
the
till
next
then
person
Shabbat.
else, or it has to be
Right, so
maybe-
they have a field day with that question. But that's not, but
A night is a night is a night.
no,
Okay.
but I should know. Because if you have a scalpel
Okay.
used for operating, you're not going to say, oh, I just need chopped salad. Right? You didn't do that.
You wouldn't use your speaker knife to cut steak, so to speak.
And cut vegetables.
Yeah, right.
Lettuce.
You got a knife, which is supposed to be cut. Really sharp. Leave good luck, only used to cut soup of, meat.
So again, when you
Is-
say,
Is that a, is this in the drawer?
say a butcher's knife that he uses to butch the knife, the meat, the raw meat, but he will never use to cut cooked meat.
Mhm.
Right? Why is that important? Because what happens, I mean, again, let's ask a more difficult question. Let's say it's a knife that you're very, very makbid on, you wouldn't let anyone touch, you wouldn't let anyone use, even yourself, you wouldn't use except to slice your cooked meat. Can you slice meat with that on Shabbat? Or is that Muktze mechamat chasson kis? Right? What's missing? The question is, does it have to be a klisha machtola isu? In order, shemelachtola isu is the prerequisite of being a Muktze mechamat chasson kis. First of all, it has to be something that you're not supposed to be using on Shabbat for its regular purpose. And also you're makbid to use only for that purpose. But we're going to get to this in unit 42.
Here's my knife that I don't let anybody else touch.
Before the afternoon, you're gonna use that.
I think we'll all chip in and buy a new knife. So, yeah, fair.
So that's specific,
No.
the butcher's knife,
What?
butcher's knife, you're gonna say on Friday afternoon, I'm gonna use it on Shabbat.
Cool. Again, that's Muktze mechamat chasson kis works differently.
Okay.
Its nature is different. Because Muktze, yeah, so I put it aside because it's different.
Okay.
So again, why do you guys all go into this other point? Because the Gemara says, right, exactly. The intention, right? The intent of use when Shabbat began. So you intend on using the jug. You don't need the actual intention because it's a jug. So obviously you can use it on Shabbat, except it breaks, and then you can't use it because it's broken. At least you can't use it as a jug, but you could use it as something else. If you can still use it as something else, is that Muktze? We say, no, both Tanakam and Rabbi Yehuda will agree that it's not Muktze. That's the Gemara's first step. Then, motiv of zutrai. Masikin bekilim, vein masikin beshivrei kilim. We're talking about Yontiv here. What I have, let's say I have this table, and this table is broke. Am I allowed to use this table as fuel? Because I have to barbecue. And then I realize, oh my gosh, I don't have enough wood. I don't have enough coal. So I want to use other things. Well, I have some chairs. I can use them as fuel. But I also have broken chairs. The broken chairs are Muktze, because you can't sit on them, right? So they're no longer chairs. So they're just pieces of wood. So you say you're not allowed to use those as fuel. So it's a fuch al fuch, right? I'm not allowed to carry what is Muktze. So if I didn't,
How do you use fuel on Shabbat?
on Yontiv, yeah. Sorry, yes, I can see that's wildly confusing. Sorry. Yeah, I said that quickly. All right, whoever missed that. We're talking about Yontiv, so we're talking about using these things as fuel on Yontiv. So the Gemara asks, the Nishberu Eimat, when did they break? Right, my wooden chairs that broke, when did they break? If they broke before Yom Tov, so they have the same din as regular wood, and then it depends on whether I intended on using it, just like every Yom Tov, right? You can't collect new fuel for cooking on Yom Tov. You're only allowed to use the fuel that's already there, that you intended, that you collected, whatever. Which means despite it breaking on Yom Tov, you're not allowed to carry it. Now again, so I have a wooden chair. I want to use it as fuel. I have a wooden chair when Shabbat starts. Then Shabbat morning, it falls, breaks. It's no longer a chair. So I say, oh great, I need this for fuel. And the Braita says, no, you're not allowed to use it. Why not? Because it's Muktze. Because it's a broken chair, so it's no longer a chair. It's not usable. And when it broke on Shabbat, so you see that even though Ben Shmashot it was a chair and I was allowed to carry it, now it's Muktze. So this goes against the idea we said before, that if Shabbat started with this item being a proper tool that is not Muktze, so even if it breaks on Shabbat, you can still carry it, l'kulei alma, for other uses. Elait
Can I
malachit.
use that same?
And then our maskana is hafuk. I just want to say the maskana. Elait malachit. They must have meant the other way around, which is what Amar v'Amar Shmuel machloket shenishbaru b'Shabbat. Mal savar muchanu, mal savar noladu. Right. So Rabbi Yehuda says this is a new use that was created on Shabbat. I had a jug, and now I'm going to use the bottom part of the jug to cover the things in the food before I put it in the fridge. So that's a new use. You're creating something new here. Tanakama says no, because it was a kli, it remains a kli. The Rida says, yeah, it was a different kli, right? So that's the machlok. Aval me'erev Shabbat, divra kol mutarin, meaning, if it broke before Shabbat, so what was it, Ben Shmashot? It was already a broken jug. So it was already a pot lid or whatever.
It's a potential kli, bein hashmashot.
Correct. It was because it was already broken then, that makes it better, right? So the first Memra said, if it broke before Shabbat, it makes it, if it broke on Shabbat, it makes it better because Ben Hashmashot was already designated. He says Rasutra, no, I think you misunderstood. It's the other way around. If it broke before Shabbat, then it could be redesignated before Shabbat. You can't redesignate on Shabbat. Redesignation on Shabbat, that's a machloket. But if it was redesignated coming into Shabbat, then it's okay. So what we have so far is, if it broke before Shabbat, it's already the new tool when Shabbat starts. If it breaks on Shabbat itself, then you have a machloket whether it has to have the same function, or do I say that's nolad? That's sorry, if it has a different function, do I say as long as it functions, it doesn't really matter? Or do I say you can't redesignate on Shabbat? Redesignation is like nolad. So, okay. Don't worry if this is a bit, it's only going to get worse. All right? This is a very interesting thing that Rashi explains. What does the word nichtata mean? I think it's more like, in this kind of context, it would be more like smashed. Became very small bits, right? Whatever. Generally, they use their wine and they throw it's made out of cheap kind of clay, right? So then it's empty, you throw it out. It breaks. The megufa, the lid, is just a piece of wood. But it's, in a way, it's more useful and more expensive than
the pieces in a break.
Right. Yeah, more than, and they're also more expensive than the chavit itself, the barrel itself. I have a barrel made out of cheap clay, and then I have to close it properly. I need to take make something proper to cover it and to seal it. So what happens? Every one of my barrels is custom made, so also the lids are custom made. And therefore, once I don't have the barrel, I don't really have what to do with the lid. So we're not thinking like in our world where the barrel is standard size of barrels. Every person made their own barrel, and then you have to make a custom-made lid for that barrel. Now, what happens once the barrel is gone?
What happened to them? What?
Once the barrel is gone.
The lid is useless.
Destroyed.
Yeah, they let it smash, and then they're going to reshape the clay tomorrow, right? They throw it into the corner and it breaks. They don't care about it. They're going to reshape it. They'll just reshape it tomorrow. It's not a big deal.
No longer Muktze how to use, then it remains that way.
So that's exactly, that's the next part of the Gemara. So Rashi points out it's not that the megufa was nichtat, right? The chavit, right? The barrel is broken, and now we're talking about the lid, which is the more expensive part, but it's not really useful right now. Mutal l'tetel b'Shabbat, just like Dan said. Tana mihachi megufa shenichtata. He ushvara mutal l'tetel b'Shabbat. ולא יספוט ממנה שבר לכסות בה את הכלי ולסמוך בקרה המיטה. אם זרקה בהשפעה אסור. So now, what happens if, so you say like this, I have my barrel. I throw it aside and it smashes, fine. Now I have this piece of the barrel, this shape. So if I have this shape, it's very useful. First of all, I might have flat and neat parts. I can have the flat and neat parts I can use to cover things. If I have something like this, I could also somehow hold it up and put things in it still, right? It might still be able to hold something. So, so the Gemara says, as long as it's useful as is, you're allowed to continue using it, but you can't, what's the word you used before? You can't, it's not really to standing, right? You can't smooth the edges, so there, to render it more useful. So that's the yispot. The word yispot is smoothing the edges, right? Right, Rashi writes, yispot yitaken atir britotav ukzav b'shabbat. Yispot is
you can't mold it in any way.
right, exactly. That'll be tikkun kli. That's a different problem, right?
Yes, that makes sense.
Right.
I don't think it's a question.
Right, yeah, that's a totally different sugya, right? It's not the sugya of Muktze, yeah. But the main point is I can use it as is. I'm allowed to use the broken parts as is, as long as they're useful, right? Now, so what is the, until now, so far, we haven't said any real chidush. That's exactly what Tanakama said, right? I have broken pieces of clay and they're useful, so I'm allowed to use them as they are, not to fix them up for something else. Beseder, that's the sugya of tikkun kli, right? But the chidush in this braita is the last line. Im zraka ba'ashpa asur. Once I've thrown it into the place where I remold the clay, right, exactly. Then I'm going to remold the clay, but currently I put it in the place where I put broken bits and I don't reuse them. I remold them. I'm not going to reuse them. Once you've put them there, then you've designated them and then I've remuktzified it, right? We're talking about demuktizifying, now we're talking about remuktizifying. Okay, fair point. Fair point. Once I think about them, even before, fair point. You're saying once I've decided I'm going to throw them out, I've already remuktzified them in my mind, right? Now, let's assume for the moment, shalom, that only when I've actually done the actions will make them muktzah. Papa says, I don't really understand. If I take perfectly good clothing and I put it in the garbage on Shabbos, does it become muktah? You might say, why are you putting the perfectly good clothing? Because it's too small on my kids and I'm lazy and I'm throwing it out. So
Okay.
I take perfectly good clothing and put it in the garbage. Is it muktah on Shabbat?
I would say yes.
You'd say yes. Rav Papa says, of course not. Why are you saying of course? He says, he's saying it's ridiculous to say that if you throw something perfectly good into the garbage on Shabbos, suddenly it becomes muktah. Now, why is he saying this is perfectly good? Because a moment ago I was allowed to use this to cover things, etc. Right? That's why the assumption is it's perfectly good. Right? So Rav Papa says if you throw it in the garbage before Shabbat, then it'll be usher. So what do we have? I want to try to sum up what we have. Okay. Something broke before Shabbat. The broken parts can still be used on Shabbat. Lekule alma, as long as they're useful, I can use them. Sorry, yes. No, I said correct. If it broke on Shabbat itself, Rabbi Das says it has to be used for the original purpose. It has to be able to serve the original purpose. Otherwise, it's nolad. You're creating something new on Shabbat. Okay. Now, then the Gemara later on adds, what about when you throw things into the garbage? So if you throw it into the garbage on Shabbat, it won't suddenly become muktzah just because you threw it in the garbage on Shabbat. If you threw it in the garbage before Shabbat, then it came into Shabbat as something that you've already designated as Muktze. So let's see the Ramban's summing up of this. See the Ramban at the bottom of page 2.
A wealthy guy throws away something on Shabbat.
Oh.
It's still usable for someone who's not.
We're going to get to that. That's a fair question. We'll get to that later on. Let's just see the Ramban.
Well, that's what I thought.
It doesn't cut. Right. So if the question,
that was the question.
no, besides the question,
It's a good deal. Good plan.
right. Right. No, the pshat is right. The pshat is that once I've designated as Muktze, it'll be Muktze for everyone else as well, right? But only before Shabbat. If we reach Ben Hashmashot and I've designated this as Muktze, so it'll be Muktze for the whole Shabbat.
On Shabbat.
If it's in the garbage on Shabbat, it'll never turn it into Muktze. It'll never become Muktze on Shabbat because I threw it in the garbage. It could become Muktze on Shabbat because it's broken into 1,000 pieces, but it's not going to be Muktze on Shabbat because I put it in the garbage. So let's see the Ramban. My brother Ramban the Meiri here, right? The Ramban the Meiri, they say like this. עדיין הכנתן ותורתן עליהן כל זמן שראויים למלאכה. So to remuktzify something, the standard is very, very high. So it has to be because it was already rendered useful, so it has to be rendered completely useless in order to stop being seen as an item of mine, as a tool of mine. אבל אבנים וכל שלא היה כלי כגון צרורות שבחצר סולת התלן שלא אוכלו מעולם. To go back to the previous unit, there the requirement of how to turn them into something useful is much higher, right? We require everything we dealt with in unit 38. הטעם דמקלים עטו וחזו לתשמיש, הלקח מותר לתלתלן. ומיועי מבודיום זרקן אסורי. דאבלי כצורות שבחצר ודם לשברי חביות של זרקן להשפעה מבודיום דאסיר. So if I put them in the garbage before Shabbat, I've decided to return them to nature. I've remuktified them, and then when Shabbat started, it was already muktzah. We have to look at your Rav Baruch, we have to look at your wonderful comments afterwards. Send me some historical notes about creating barrels and stuff,
Right.
corks and.
It's historical pieces that reflect what's going on in the Gemara.
Historical fragments, just like the fragments of our barrels. Very good. Says the Meiri. No. Right. Says the Meiri. אפילו זרקה מגופה בשבת להשפעה, אין אומרים שבטלה עכשיו מתורה. On page 3. אפילו זרקה מגופה בשבת להשפעה, אין אומרים שבטלה עכשיו מתורת כלי. בכל מקום ראויה הייתה בשבת, וכאילו זרק שם גלימתו שהינה בטלה, שבטלה דעתו. אבל אם זרקה מבעוד יום להשפעה, כבר בטלה מאתמול, ולא נראית בשבת. לא נראית, meaning it wasn't seen as useful. Right? וכגון זה לא בטלה דעתו, ואסורה לטלטל. אף על פי שאילו זרק גלימתו, אף מבעוד יום לא נאסר טלטולה. בזו שני, הואיל נדחית מערב שבת, נדחית, מה שאין כן בגלימה. So before you need both criteria, both things have to happen before Shabbat in order to turn them into Muktze. Let's see, the Shulchan Aruch just says the halacha based on the Meiri and the Ramban. Let's just see how this psak works. He says like this: Kol hakelim shenishberu afilu b'Shabbat mutar letel shivrim. The Shulchan Aruch in Shin Chet Vav. Have here? Kol hakelim shenishberu b'Shabbat, shenishberu afilu b'Shabbat mutar letel shivrim. Bilvad shiuruim l'shum melacha. So it's broken on Shabbat and still useful in any way whatsoever. Broken on Shabbat before Shabbat and still useful. It's not Muktze. Right. The pieces are not Muktze as long as they're useful.
It's one piece.
All the useful all the useful pieces aren't Muktze. The non-useful pieces are Muktze.
It makes sense.
כיוון שבא לחסות בחבית, שווה זכות לחסות בפי הפח. אבל אינם רואים לשום מלאכה לא, right, if it's broken, if it's shattered into 1,000 pieces, it's not useful in any way, and therefore it's not. I'm skipping over to
You can
Zayin.
still move it, because you want to make it sakana.
So, very good. I was going to skip that part. That's the Rima. The Rima says that you're still allowed, the Rima right here. You could move aside, right? You could you could sweep up the glass so that no one will get hurt, right? But only that. But only that. Right. So there's a special din. We're going to get to this. A special din that you're allowed to carry. But even though it is Muktze, despite it being Muktze, you're allowed to put it in a place that won't harm anyone. It's a special kula.
Enough to me know that that's now it is. You just couldn't do that. You don't need broken glass.
You don't?
We wouldn't leave broken glass
Right.
anywhere.
That'd be the same thing the Rima says.
We wanted it all there. I guess if it's like in the corner, like
Look, with I don't know, with the monkeys running around my house, I wouldn't leave glass anywhere. But no, little kids I have very jumpy wild kids. They'll get into anything.
I'm saying if there are any actual limitation, not very.
Right. I mean, whatever. If you have a broken plastic jug that won't hurt anyone, the bottom just cracked. It's not useful in any way whatsoever. It's not going to hurt anyone. It's just not useful. It's already right.
You can't take it off.
Another reason not to use plastic.
He's good.
Make it better.
No, he's saying because of he wants to reusable. He doesn't want to use khatam. Now, let's see. Okay. Yes. So that's a very, very big question. It goes back to what I think I was saying before about our world of plenty, right? This is I always have this issue with my father-in-law, right? I save all bottles. I'm a big drinker. I'm a heavy drinker. I always need to drink water all the time. And I drink a lot.
But you don't need 150 bottles.
But
He could go on to
I'm not gonna. No. But I always need. I don't buy hundreds of bottles either because I'm always saving the old ones. I always need a bottle around so I can fill it up because when I sit down to work, I always need a bottle next to me. I'm always drinking all the time. So I always need bottles around. Right, and my father-in-law, every time he comes, he's like this. Well, why are you doing this? Like, come on, get rid of all this stuff, and he gets rid of the bottles. I'm like, no, we need the bottles, right? So that's now in the world, in our world, who's right? Did the bottles become Muktze because no one reuses the bottles, or
I think
what is the norm? All right, we're gonna have some more examples, but we have to finish in 1 minute. I just want to see Zayin. Don't worry, the whole rest of the unit is going to go back to this. Right. I see. Yes. Right, I have a jug. I agree. What happens when I have it on the table? Right, I brought the jug to the table and then so I put it down. The bottom cracked. It's plastic, so it's not dangerous. It's just cracked. So I'm allowed to just remove it now, right? Or do I have to do it b'shinui? Some kind of. Let's see סעיף זין. חתיכת חרס שנשברה בחול, מכלי, וראויה לכסות בכלי, מותר לטלטלה אפילו במקום שאין כלים מצויים שם לכסותם. אם זרקה להשפעה מבעוד אסור לטלטלה כיוון שבטלה להיות עוד כלי, ודווקא חתיכת חרס משום דעתם משברי כלי, אבל דבר שאין בו שייכות כלי, כגון צורות או אבנים, אף בשיעורים לכסות בהם כלי אסור לטלטלם. So, again, it only becomes Muktze when you throw it in the garbage if it broke and you threw it in the garbage. So, if it broke and you threw it in the garbage, that'll make it Muktze. So what do we have so far? We have the the criteria of something that broke before Shabbat. There you'd be more mekel, but lemaisa it looks like we hold like Tanakama that as long as the broken pieces are useful, it doesn't matter when it broke, on Shabbat or before. That's not important. We have the other part, we have the other aspect of that of something I threw in the garbage. Because then I've chosen to muktzeify it, and then, but only if it's broken. If it's not broken, so even if I put it in the garbage, now again, you have a good question, what does broken mean, right? When you empty your Coke bottle, is that broken because it's no longer a useful thing, right? It's time you finish your bottle of wine, right? That no one keeps, right?
And you don't.
Even I.
We used to fill like water and use it like a cup.
All right, so there's no, so right before I was very makpid to serve all the water I serve on Purim. So that Purim is only always in whiskey bottles or wine bottles, or right. Right? Even you drink water is to be not.
If you
We're
go
very,
to a
we're very
restaurant,
machmir, we're very firm.
if you go to a restaurant, often they will serve water in
I've seen
wine
that too.
bottle.
So, Beseder, we'll go deeper into this next week, Mr. Hashem. Shkoyach,
Is that a big
everyone.
case to say you can come off in the middle of Shabbat?